A few months ago, I posted a video titled 20 Obby Creator Update Ideas, and you guys seem to enjoy it a lot, so here's another one. Like I said in the original video, Obby Creator is a great game, and throughout the time I've been playing it, I've thought of many update ideas that could improve it and add more possibilities to what you can create. In this video, I'll be sharing 20 of them with you. If you go on to enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. I'd love to hit 3,000 subscribers soon. Anyway, let's begin with update idea number 1, which is to add more flexibility to custom premades. Specifically, we should be able to create premades with moving parts. If you attempt to do so, it says cannot create premades with moving parts currently, implying that the developer of Obby Creator intends to add these at some point. I imagine the reason you couldn't do this from the start is because it would be complicated to code, but I mean, it's been like 2 years since custom premades came out. Number 2, this one's kinda a continuation on the previous update idea. Add the ability to add someone else's creation to your own obby. You guys have been asking me for a very long time if I'll ever allow community-submitted towers in my J2H rings, and the main reason I haven't done that is there's just no good way to do it. I'd have to be in the same server with you the entire time you built it, which from my experience building a tower takes multiple hours. I'd probably have builders do this on another obby slot and then I'd transfer it via custom premades, but still, I'd really prefer not to stay in the same server for hours. What I think the best way to make community submitted towers possible would be to allow you to make a premade using something someone else built on their own obby slot. What is probably the reason you can't do this right now is because you wouldn't want people to just steal each other's obbies, but that could be fixed easily enough if you just added an option for obbies that you could toggle on to allow other players to create premades using the things that are on that obby slot. That way, people could submit towers like this. They would build it on their own obby slot on their own time, tell me they'd like to submit it, and probably during a live stream, they could join me and I'd decide if I wanted to accept it or not. If I do accept it, I'd make a premade from it, or multiple premades if the tower is over 200 parts, and then I'd transfer it to my own J2H ring. Number 3, add a new lighting effect that desaturates the colors partially, but not completely. I'm going to be making my ring 4 soon, which I want things to appear semi-desaturated, like this. Perhaps you could replace the black and white lighting effect, and it would instead be a special property that you can change it to a specific level of saturation, including 0, which is black and white. Or, if you wanted to, you can increase the saturation above 100. Number 4, be able to add more than 2 destinations to a moving part. Currently, you can only have 2 destinations that it moves between. If you place multiple moving parts in a figure like this and turn reverse off, you can kinda make it appear that there are more than 2 destinations, but of course this trick is limited as you can't make just one of these be here. Number 5, be able to create a teleporter to another obby slot. The way this could be done would be either an entirely new type of part or a special property to a teleport pad. I think the best way this mechanic would work would be that if a player steps on it, a message would appear on their screen reading something like, teleport to, insert the name and obby ID of the destination obby, from which the player would either click yes or no. Why should this be added, you may ask? What would be nice for people making J2H rings is they could make a ring select. There would be teleporters to the different obby slots for each ring. Also, if you do like I do, where I build the Citadel and Soul Crushing tower for each ring on a different obby slot, I could build a tower portal and make it be a teleporter to the obby slot. That would be way better than having to put a sign with the obby ID on it, which half the time gets hashtagged anyway. Speaking of which, I have another idea regarding text filtering later on in this video. Number 6, make the Modify Effects button property work correctly. What's supposed to happen is that if this property is set to true, it will not only activate/deactivate the part it's connected to, but it will also activate/deactivate any effects on that part. But nope, this property can only deactivate effects. If you try to activate one, it just doesn't work for some reason. While testing the property to make sure I'm describing everything correctly, I found that after you enter the obby, you can set the transparency of the effect to something like 0.5, and then the effect will start working correctly. But after you exit and re-enter the obby, it'll go back to not working correctly. Also, it only works correctly doing that if it's because of a timer that deactivates the button and not a button deactivator. Basically, what I'm saying here is that this property really needs to be fixed. Number 7, add an Explorer window like in Roblox Studio. It can be another tab in the Properties window, like how there's currently the properties for the selected part and the whole obby. If you don't know what the Explorer window is, it's basically a list of everything in your entire game, which you can organize into folders, models, etc. The Explorer window in Obby Creator shouldn't actually be identical to the one you'd see if you were editing the game in Roblox Studio, though. Obviously, you wouldn't want someone to just be able to delete the whole map or insert game-breaking scripts. What the Obby Creator Explorer window should show is just every part/object in a player's own obby. What this will be useful for would be organizing things for easier editing later on. For example, let's say you build a super epic looking platform in your tower that uses like 50 parts. If you wanted to select it to move or duplicate it, you could do the drag to select, that is if you're not on mobile, but then you could end up selecting things behind it you don't want to. Or alternatively, you could multi-select all 50 parts, but that would of course take forever. Both of these could be improved with an Explorer window. You could group all the parts making up the platform into a model or folder, then easily select it from the Explorer window. Number 8, we should be able to lock parts so you can't select them. Why? Well, this update idea goes along with the Explorer window idea, as it needs that to function. Locking parts exists also in Roblox Studio. Basically, a locked part can't be selected unless you do so from the Explorer window. The reason that is useful is because you can do drags to select on something but not select objects behind whatever you're selecting that you don't want to. Number 9. Speaking of drag to select, add it to mobile. On PC, if you click and drag, this box appears on screen, and any part within that will be selected once you release click, so long as it's less than the part selection limit, which I believe is 1000. This doesn't exist on mobile, so if you try to select something with lots of parts, you're going to have to go in multi-select mode and manually click every single part, which can take forever. What I think would be the best way for drag to select to work on mobile would be that it's another button at the bottom of the screen. When you click it, your camera locks and you can't move it, as dragging your finger on the screen creates the drag to select box. The drag to select box will select everything inside it, just like on PC. Number 10. Be able to require a specific push box to activate a button or pressure plate. There's not much to say about this one. It would just be nice and give us better control over buttons and client object sections. Also, it would help to make puzzle game kinds of things. Number 11. Fix the weird thing where text gets hashtagged when you load an obby, but if you select the text and press enter, it becomes unhashtagged. You might think that's a terrible idea because people could type inappropriate messages, but anything inappropriate gets hashtagged by default, and you can't just press enter on the text box and make it come back. Now, maybe this one isn't possible, because maybe if you were to remove that, you'd have to completely remove the text filtering, which of course you don't want to because people could type inappropriate messages, like I just said. But it's still annoying whenever half the signs get hashtagged when I or anyone else loads the obby. Number 12. In the previous update ideas video, one of the update ideas was an undo and redo button, which they've finally been added. When you click one of these buttons, it will say undid or redid on the screen, and it'll undo or redo the action. I think that instead it should say action undone or action redone. Doesn't that just sound nicer? Number 13. You know the somewhat new thingy that appears when you are linking buttons? It helps when making button sections, but I think it would be cool if this outline effect was actually added to the effects that you could add to a part. Now, yes, there's already an outline effect, but it's not exactly the same as the one with button selection. Number 14. Have the effects that have been added to timed parts and other types of parts that can disappear, such as fading parts, go away when the part is not visible. The main reason I personally want this is for the flickering lights I did in this part of my Ring 3 lobby. Without this, I had to use moving parts with the surface light effect and sync the movement with the timed part that reveals a black part that is supposed to be off. It's behind it and you can see it when the timed part is deactivated. Not only was it super annoying to make, it also uses an extra part per light and doesn't even look as good as I'd like it to, since you can see the light moving, which is not what I wanted. Also, if this update was added, it should be a toggleable property in case you want to keep the effect active the whole time. Number 15. I think we could use some quality of life changes to Team Create. The first one would be that if you have edit access on someone else's obby, you should be able to disable this extremely annoying window that pops up every time you try to enter edit mode, even on your own obby. We could maybe have a separate button at the top of the screen to bring it up instead. It could even have a notification dot thingy that would appear to let you know someone new has given you edit access to their obby. The second Team Create update would allow you to enter and exit edit mode while in another player's obby, with 1, not having to click a second time every time, and 2, not have it teleport you to in front of the obby every time. It should only do that if you enter edit mode on someone else's obby if you're not actually at the obby already. And finally, the third update to Team Create would be that when you aren't in edit mode on that person's obby, the cache at the bottom right of the screen goes back to the cache on your obby that you have loaded, and you can earn money on it. The way to go back to that right now is you have to go into edit mode on your own obby, edit something, and then make sure it actually goes back to your own cache amount, and there's really no need for that. Number 16. Be able to see how close you are to reaching every limit in the game. The first thing that you probably just thought of was part limit, which of course that's already at the top of the screen while you're in edit mode. There are also limits to the following part types: button, character model, conveyor, moving part, push part, spin part, timed part, water. You might not know this, but there are also limits to effects you can add to parts. For example, you can only add 300 total text effects per obby. I think a counter showing how close you are to reaching those limits would be useful, and it also shows that limits for those even exist in the first place. When I was building floor 8 of Tower of Music Theory Mayhem, I reached the text effect limit and I didn't even know that existed until then. If I did know that existed, I would have known to put less signs and or put more information per sign so that there would be less. Now, I know that normally I wouldn't put 300 signs in an obby, but a lot of them in Tower of Music Theory Mayhem weren't actually signs to read. They were sharp, flat, and natural symbols or other stuff that's like, a single character. 17. You should have an option to toggle whether the obby slot borders are visible. It would be useful for screenshots. This is a simple update, but I think it would be nice. Number 18. Be able to change the text font on the signs at the entrance to your obby. I think this could be done in the Global Properties tab of the Properties window, and it could possibly also be part of the Advanced Tools Game Pass, since it's kind of in a similar category of things as the ability to edit the floor of your obby. Number 19. allow players to have a little bit more control over click buttons. There are two main options I think should be added. Firstly, an option where you can allow players to click the button even through walls and other parts. An example of where that would help would be on a tower I built for my Christmas 2022 event, Tower Festive Facility Infiltration. Before actually entering the tower, you have to do this push box thing and press a button, each of which will deactivate one of the two parts that are right here. It looks like one, but it's just because they're the same position and dimensions and stuff. A minor problem arises when we reach the click button that opens the door. Because of these parts between the camera and the button, it doesn't let you click it. Thus, you have to zoom your camera in a little bit, and the best way to tell the player that they should do that is just to say zoom in the first person. With this new option, we could fix that. Of course, you'd still be able to click the button from other random places you don't want, so perhaps something else that could be added would be that you can choose specific parts that you can click a button through. And the second option that could be added to click buttons is one that requires your actual character to be in with a certain distance of the click button in order to click it, instead of just your camera. Because otherwise, you could just move your camera to the button and not actually do the parkour at all. Number 20. Last but certainly not least, add the ability to easily see more obbies from the same person. Perhaps under the player's profile picture in front of the obby, there's a button that says more obbies from this player, and if you click it, it will bring up a menu similar to the load obby menu, but it'll show all the obbies of that player instead of your own obbies. Also, in the load obby menu, or maybe somewhere else, you could be able to bring up the screen without having to load one of that person's obbies. You could search their username or user ID. Also, the more obbies from this player button could be next to the load button for any of their obbies. I mentioned at the end of the original update ideas video that I suspected at least a few of the ideas would be added, and sure enough, undo and redo buttons were indeed added, so hopefully some of these ideas in this video get added at some point, but then again, none of them are quite as requested by the community as undo and redo buttons. The main one I personally would like is the ability to add someone else's creation to your own obby, because like I said, you guys have been asking me for a very long time if we ever be able to submit your own towers for my J2H rings in Obby Creator. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to leave a like and consider subscribing. I'd love to hit 3,000 subscribers soon. I'll see you in the next video, and have a great day.